Hi, this is Aaron Eisberg-Nog from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you're listening to Beyond Trek. You can follow them on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod and on Facebook at Beyond Trek Productions.
This is Beyond Trek Podcast, your source for Star Trek on social media and around the web. I'm Big J.
I'm Murray.
And I'm Dag, the Trivia Master. You can find us on Facebook at Beyond Trek Podcast and on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod.
Red alert.
Nice to meet you, Mike.
Nice to meet you too.
Well, we're glad you're here, that you could make it. So what we're going to do is, now I was telling Dag before, you're Cryptic Community Manager, or is it Art Games now, or does it not really matter?
Cryptic.
Okay.
Yeah, so Cryptic Studios, just to explain real quick, Cryptic Studios is a subsidiary of Perfect World Entertainment, but I work for Cryptic specifically.
Your role is essentially to bridge that gap between the developers and the players.
Yeah. So what I do is I'm like you said, a community manager. My job is a lot of different things. I actually wear a ton of hats. The primary, wow, I've never pronounced that word like that and never will again. The primary thing I do, one time, you heard it here first, folks. One thing I do is the primary thing that I do is engage with the community, gather their feedback and present it to the developers, take the community's feedback, take the developers things that they need announced, and message it for the community in the right way. I also am responsible for writing and copy editing all of the blogs that appear on our site. I do all of the image work for that. I plan large events that we go to with, like Star Trek Las Vegas, of course, with the help of our Perfect World marketing team. And I do a stream once a week, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. It's called Star Trek, 4 p.m. PT. It's called 10 Forward Weekly. It's a lot of fun. We talk about the game. We interview developers. We do all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place. It's almost like being an ambassador for the game, which is why my name is Ambassador Kell. But also a little bit of marketing, a little bit of event stuff. As many hats as I can wear, I wear them all.
You'll have to get me that link for your stream so I can put that in our podcast description. So we've got that, which should be awesome. So basically what you do is you take the specs from the customer and walk it down to the engineers.
That's a big part of it for sure. I would say we also, not everybody who works on the game is an engineer. There's artists, there's game designers, there's systems designers, writers. And so I interface with all of them and the fans. I advise them on how best to communicate with the fans. And if there's something that, we need communicated out, I also handle that.
Right on. Is this your first experience as a community manager for an MMORPG?
It is, yeah. I've been doing it for about 3 years now, so it feels kind of old hat at this point. I don't think I'm fresh and new anymore. But yeah, it's definitely the first time I've done anything like this, and it's and the first year was a really fun learning process, and now I, 3 years in, really feel like I'm at the point where I can really, I really know what I'm doing, and I can provide the kind of feedback that everybody's looking for.
Nice. In your experience as a community manager, are there any interactions you have that you feel would be specific to the Star Trek audience for the game, as opposed to other MMORPGs like World of Warcraft? What's exclusive to the Star Trek online experience from a community manager's perspective?
Well, I think the exclusivity that we have is Star Trek fans are a very interesting breed of fans. They're the original fans, really. The first conventions, the first major fan movements in the US anyway, were Star Trek, because the fans banded together to save the show twice. And so I think there's a ton of passion and a ton of love for the past in our fandom. I think, Star Trek has now been moving into sort of like some new TV shows, like Discovery's on almost to season 3. Picard is coming out, I think sometime early next year. And so there's all of this fascinating new stuff happening for Star Trek. But our fans also really, really love the old stuff and make that very clear that they really want to know more about, say, the characters from Deep Space Nine or Voyager or The Next Generation, or all the way back to the original series. And you see that a lot when you go to STLV as well. Like there's lots of people walking around in, Discovery uniforms, but there's just as many people walking around in, the kind of ridiculous spandex, skin showing stuff that they would have people dress in the original series.
Now, were you able to, I might have missed it if you said it, and I apologize, but were you able to attend the STLV Star Trek Las Vegas convention?
Yeah, I've been the last 3 years, and it's a super fun, but super, so I've been to a lot of conventions over the years. I've been to Comic-Con and, PAX and a bunch of stuff. And people were saying when I first started working here, STLV is unlike any convention you've ever been to. And I think that's partially true and partially not. That, it functions like every other convention in terms of the behind the scenes stuff. But in terms of what the feel of the convention is like, it is really different. It's like a family reunion, especially because there were so many years where, there wasn't new Star Trek. And so, you'd go to STLV and the people you would be meeting there were the people from that you saw every year, their TNG cast members and such. And these guys have put on the same panel, talking to the fans so many times that they, I think, can almost do it by memory, telling, a lot of the same stories and jokes, but people keep coming back because it feels like it's coming to a family reunion. And so it's like, if Shatner's on stage telling another story about his jazz album, it's like, when you're at the Thanksgiving dinner and your uncle starts telling the same joke that he tells every year, you're like, oh, well, that's just Uncle Bill.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And so it feels a lot like that. And I know a lot of people who just go to see their friends every year, which is really cool. I love that it has that kind of community feeling.
That does sound really cool. I love the sound of that.
Yeah.
I manage our Twitter account for the podcast, and I follow a couple hundred people there, and it's just so great to see all of them. The one thing they look forward to every year is seeing each other because they're the Twitter Trek fam.
Yeah.
And it's just so awesome to see that level of community, and how much, like, even right now they're saying, man, I miss my friends at STLV.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really, really cool.
It was at STLV a couple weeks ago that Anthony Rapp announced. It was announced that Anthony Rapp would be reprising his role and would be in the next Star Trek Online episode's Awakening.
Yeah, which is super, super cool. We've been working on that for a couple of months, and it's really exciting to finally be able to talk about it. Anthony is the coolest guy in the world. I've chatted with him a couple of times now. And Awakening sounds super, super cool. It's basically, I don't know if you know much about what our game has been doing recently, but we, because we had the opportunity to be, for the first time ever in our game's, almost 10 years of life, in lockstep with an actual airing Star Trek TV show, we went whole hog on that. We built an Age of Discovery expansion, which would normally be something that we would take, almost a year to build. And instead of taking all this time and building it and then releasing it all at once, we released it bit by bit over the course of the year. So that over the course of from last September until a few months ago, we put out basically an expansion's worth of content, so that now when you go into the game, you can start as a new Discovery captain and have a whole brand new experience waiting for you. But now with Awakening, we're heading back to our main timeline, which is 2410, which is about 30 years after Nemesis. And we're going to be telling a story of the mycelial network, which if you may have seen in season 2 of Discovery and season 1, I think. And our villain from the Discovery expansion, Ja'ula, which is a Klingon warrior. She's the sister of T'Kuvma, has come forward in time to 2410 with a super weapon that's powered by mycelium, by the fungus that was used to activate the spore drive in Discovery. And so her using this weapon has caused her to create all of these problems in space-time and the way the universe flows, because she's damaging the mycelial network, which, if you know from Discovery, the mycelial network connects everything in the universe, and damaging it damages our world as well. And so because it's a spore problem and not something that, there's not a lot of astromycologists out there, you and Starfleet decide to create a holographic version of Paul Stamets, who is Anthony Rapp's character from Discovery, because he has the expertise you need to solve this problem. And then over the course of Awakening, you'll follow the story of this hologram that you create that's only a semblance of a person, becoming, as we like to joke around here, becoming a real boy, and actually becoming sentient and gaining access to all of Stamets' personality and memories. It's a really cool story.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
You just went into what I consider to be like almost a tremendous amount of detail on an upcoming plot line. How much exposure do you have? Like, how much warning do you have on upcoming plot lines? And are there like strict, explicit boundaries about what you can share?
I always joke on my stream, we don't talk about upcoming content. And the reason I say that as much as a joke is because, game design changes constantly. And so we don't want to promise something and then deliver something different, or not deliver on the thing we promised at all. And so we don't like to go too far out. But the nice thing about having an event like STLV is that we have this platform that we can get everything ready for and say, okay, here's what's coming next. And we actually at STLV released a big teaser for what's coming in the rest of the year too. There were some ships and some storyline teases that people were very excited about. So that's really cool. It's when we're at the point where we are now, where everything's set, we know what the story is. Anthony Rapp's already been in to record. We can talk about stuff more openly. Otherwise, I'm usually a little more tight-lipped about it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. It seems like that storyline had to have been in development for a while for the announcement at STLV.
Yeah, all of our storylines are. We're talking right now about what we're going to be doing, next summer. Al Rivera, who is our lead content designer, was on a podcast a while ago and was teasing a storyline that the words he used was going to change the face of the game, which, I love that kind of hype. But we're talking about what that storyline. Yeah, exactly. But we're talking about what that storyline is going to be right now. And we just had a meeting this morning about some of the fiction blogs that we'll be writing to support that. So it's really, really cool.
Well, you point out next summer, and we just mentioned 2410, Nemesis 2379. So my nose is telling me that we're going to be looking ahead towards some Picard content that you can't talk about.
Yeah, and I can't talk about it for a couple of reasons. One being all the normal stuff, but two, we do have a wonderful relationship with CBS. They let us in on a lot of the behind the scenes talk, and they give us the heads up on things a lot. But especially with a show that's under wraps as Picard, we don't really know what's coming any more than you guys do. And so a lot of it is us going like, okay, we think this is going to be the plot line for next year. But if Picard does something crazy, we may have to do that. We'll just pencil this in for now.
Well, right, because Picard could basically, they're not under any obligation. Well, they wouldn't be, and it's because Picard essentially is going to be like a prequel to Star Trek Online, and unfortunately, the game is not canon. It's only what is shown on screen, so they could just completely decide to do whatever it is they're going to do, and you may find that, well, this just totally jettisons something that we've done with the game, because the game came out in 2009.
Yeah.
And it takes place in 2409. And now here we are. It's been 10 years. We're now in 2019. But the game is just now, or I seem to recall seeing it had to have only been within the last year that it went to 2410. I do play the game.
Am I right on that? But yeah, I think it was 2 years ago that we went 2410. But yeah.
So I guess here's an interesting question: Why such a lag in the time, and also how much? What is the anticipation for the announcement in the upcoming Star Trek Picard, and what it may do to your game?
Well, in terms of why so delayed on the time, I think I don't have an answer for that because I've never gotten a straight one from our lead designer. But my guess is he doesn't want to accelerate the timeline and end up 20 years in the future and have to worry about aging the actors even more and stuff like that. Because when we have, the nice thing about us being 30 years after Nemesis is that it means all of the Star Trek actors who have come in to play their characters are the age their character would be. So, if Jerry Ryan comes in to play Seven of Nine, like she did for us, I think 5 or 6 years ago, she will be the correct age that Seven of Nine would have been for our timeline. And speaking of Seven of Nine, she did come in for us several years ago, as I mentioned, and we had her play Seven as the cold, not unemotional, but the detached Borg that she played on Voyager, and this update takes place after Picard. And on Picard, as you've seen in the trailers, she's acting very human. So it's one of those things where we're running into stuff like that. And we've always known that Picard being where it was would cause some continuity problems with us. The question is how many and what severity. Jerry Ryan playing her character slightly differently. Well, if we decide to do that, to lean into that, we can maybe hire her to re-record her dialogue and change her character model in the game to have the long hair and not the cat suit anymore. If they do something like, God forbid, killing Seven of Nine in episode 3 or something like that, then we've got a big problem and we have to decide what we're going to do. And I think what we would probably lean forward in that case is, we're an alternate universe, and we were lovingly the torchbearers of the Prime timeline for 10 years, but it's worth the sacrifice of us being officially Prime to have new and great Star Trek content coming out that officially fills in the holes and has actors back like Patrick Stewart. I think we're all so excited for that any disappointment we would have over quote unquote not being canon anymore is less. Yeah.
I just had a quick comment. When I heard that STO was coming out and there was a site for the road to 2409, I could not have been more excited reading all of that stuff that had come out of the think tank. That was amazing stuff.
It was super, super cool. I love the road to 2409, even though some of it we were planning on taking Kira and putting, we knew we were going to have her as a guest star. And we wanted her back in command of a starship. And the road to 2409 had given her the character ending of, well, she becomes the Kai of Bajor. And so then we had to go, okay, first of all, why would Kira become the Kai? Second of all, why would Kira not stop being the Kai and go join Starfleet again? It was a lovely bit of writing gymnastics. I got to write the blog that explained sort of why she became the Kai. And I settled on the only reason Kira would become Kai is if she didn't trust anyone else to do the job right. And I don't think she would. Yeah, I know she wouldn't. And so I'm like, okay, that's why she would do that. And then, of course, we rescued Kai Opaka in the course of Victory's life. And then she felt comfortable being like, okay, here's someone who's qualified for the job. I can go back to doing what I do best.
Right. And that was very well written. First, it was, so Delta Rising was the expansion that included Garrett Wang returned, Jerry Ryan returned, Seven of Nine. I want to, and also Robert Picardo as a holographic doctor. Yeah. If I'm forgetting returning, I could have swore Ethan Phillips came back as Neelix as well. I feel like yes. So that was Delta Rising, and now you're talking about Victory is Life. Saw the return of many of the Deep Space Nine actors.
Nearly the entire cast of Deep Space Nine. It was we were lucky to get everybody that we did. It was amazing.
Now, is there a plan to take to do that kind of thing, but also from Picard. I'm sure your developers, your writers must be chomping at the bit to try to get some elements of Star Trek Picard into your game, but although that could be quite down the road because that's not coming out until 2020.
Yeah, it definitely will be somewhere down the road. What Al likes to say is everything canon will be in Star Trek Online eventually. I don't know if that's true. I don't think we're going to put the hyperspace lizards from Voyager in the game.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lower Decks, Picard, the Nickelodeon show, all of that stuff, we're going to find a way to integrate it, and we're going to find a way to integrate it that makes sense. And the really cool thing about STO as well is, we can mix and match the shows as much as we want. And so, while yes, Delta Rising was a Voyager expansion and Victory is Life was a Deep Space Nine expansion, we've also had things like characters from TNG interacting with characters from Voyager in our game, which is pretty straightforward and easy for us to do. And I think as we move forward, we'll see more of what if Stamets has a conversation with Geordi? I don't know if that'll ever happen. That's me spitballing, but that's the kind of thing we can do in our game, and it's really exciting. It's I've heard our game described as both a permanent Star Trek convention and a Star Trek theme park, but I think it's also a little bit like a toy box where we get to kind of take out all of our toys and play with them and write the stories that we think are cool, that usually we hope the fans think are cool too.
Well, I think the fans are going to enjoy the content that you're going to put into the game and really get a lot out of that. Now, one of the things that I wanted to get into as well was the recent news about the CBS Viacom merger.
Yes, the news from today.
yes, that's right. Which is pretty exciting. I'm glad that they finally reached an agreement to put the movies and the television shows under one roof, because I really think that will open up more crossover possibility. Just going to make it easier for in regards to distribution for the studios, for the fans. And you tell me what you think about it, but I really think that this is the MCU effect. It's the Marvel effect.
I think it's really exciting. I think the fact that there had to be lawyers involved whenever you wanted to cross over the Kelvin timeline stuff and the television stuff was just not right for Star Trek. I think Star Trek is a family and needs to be a family. We have no idea how this is going to affect us yet. As I said, it was announced today, and so we haven't. If there have been high level meetings about it, I haven't been privy to them. But I think the nice thing is that Alex Kurtzman, who is the showrunner for Discovery and kind of the brains behind this whole Star Trek relaunch that's going on right now, was a writer and I think a producer for the 3 Kelvin timeline movies. And so he's now kind of got his stewardship over everything that he's ever worked on in Star Trek. And I think he'll find really interesting ways to make those two things interact really well.
What does that mean for the game? Is there, in regards to, and I know it wouldn't be Viacom, but CBS would be, I guess, the closest entity for the game. Is there any talks about any kind of, I guess, maybe not heightened cooperation, but have they talked about maybe incorporating some elements of the game to try to make canon, or is that just still off the table?
So CBS was super cool to us when they started working on Picard and when they started working on Discovery. They met with our writers. They talked to us about what storylines we could use, what storylines they could use. I still don't think I can talk about what specifically they asked for, but when it came to Picard, they asked us to send them a lot of our plot lines and like ship designs and stuff from the game to take a look at. So they've been very, very nice to us in terms of that relationship. I don't think, like you said, they're under no obligation to not step on the storylines we've done. And as a writer myself, I can understand that. It was kind of the same thing as when Disney took over Star Wars and erased the EU, because there's, with 30 years of books in that era, there's no way you can make new movies in that timeline and not step on something. And kind of the same thing with us.
Oh, you're right. You couldn't, because I remember reading the book. I don't recall the name of it. It was, I know what it was about. It was about these aliens that were from another galaxy.
The Yuuzhan Vong. Yeah,
the Yuuzhan Vong. They were pretty much, you couldn't hurt them with a lightsaber. It was an even playing field. Coruscant had to be evacuated. I remember that. Yep. But also, here's the big thing. One of the big things that happened in that. Well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who might want to read the book. It's a 10-year-old
series.
You're right.
I think actually probably maybe even 20. I remember I read that the book you're about to spoil. I think I read in high school. So
right. Exactly.
Get to Descent to the Mirror Universe, or is this a Star Trek podcast?
This is what happens when you get nerds talking. This is right when you get what happens when you get nerds talking, because then we, you talk about anything and we start going off on tangents.
Yeah, this is a Star Wars podcast. I think you might have gotten off on the wrong exit.
Then I gotta go. Bye.
Right.
Get me back on that runabout through the wormhole, please.
Well, I was about to spoil a death of a pretty significant character, and so I can see where they had to jettison the EU because there was too much, and that's the thing is George Lucas has said that even the EU is canon. Everything's canon, which is different from Star Trek, where only if it's seen on screen is it canon. Right. So
and, we've done stuff, similar. This is, I guess, a bit of a spoiler, but it's if you play through the Klingon storyline in our game, Worf's son Alexander dies. And if they decide to, in Picard, go visit Worf and he's hanging out with his, I guess his son could still be alive at that point. It's in the past, but you know what I mean.
I missed that. Because that sounds like news to me. I know it shouldn't be, because besides the new Discovery stuff, I'm caught up in the game, but I don't remember that.
He dies at the end of if you're playing as a Klingon storyline. So
that's why. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're not playing as the best faction, so there's your problem right there.
Well, I have a Klingon character, and in my defense, I do have a Klingon character, but it's just gotten where, in the last 10 years that this game has been out, my time to be able to play any game, especially that, is a little more limited. Like there's just this little piece of pie that I'm trying to splice out playing different games, and I had to only focus on one of my characters, which is my engineer captain. But I have a whole list of different captains, different specialties, just no time to plan. And so
that's why you only play Klingons. Abandon your worthless Federation of allegiance. Join us in the Klingon Empire.
Klingons do not play MMORPGs.
Klingons do not like games.
Klingons do not play MMORPGs. Klingons win MMORPGs.
But now it sounds like CBS and to me, it sounds like they're at least looking at these things you're giving them to see maybe let's not completely screw these guys, or at least not intentionally if it can be avoided. Or at least throw us a
bone if they can. Yeah, I think that's the case. Now, I think, they're not going to say, oh, we can't do this really cool storyline we had because, it'll step on something from STO. But I think, they do have people looking to say, well, hey, STO dropped this thread. Maybe we can pick that up and run with it a little bit in our show, and at least throw them a bone. Or maybe we can put this ship on screen in our show, and keep the ship designs consistent between STO and Picard. And I think that stuff is awesome that they're doing that for us and that they're looking into it. I don't know if any of it will happen. None of us know when. None of us know what is going to happen in Picard, but just the fact that they asked and they reached out for it is pretty amazing.
So I want to time warp back to the beginning of doodly-doo. I want to time warp back to the beginning of your tenure as a community manager. It's 2016.
Okay.
And if memory serves, there had been that debacle between CBS and a project which we'll not name, but they had kickstarted some money for a film. And it didn't go over so well copyright wise, and CBS reacted by basically pulling the Star Trek name from podcasts and everything worldwide. How did that affect?
They had a pretty hard correction. You are right.
How when you took the reins then of the position that you have, were you in the middle of it? Was it just lingering?
It was mostly dying or dead by the time I actually stepped in as CM. I think the difference for us, the reason that didn't affect us is because we're an officially licensed CBS project as opposed to a fan project. So like where Star Trek Continues runs into issues, we have a contract with CBS that says we can use their you can use the Star Trek IP and everything that comes with it. And so that's, I think, the main key difference. Yeah. I don't know. Was that your question?
Yeah. I just wanted to see.
I had friends who worked on that movie, actually. The one that we refused to name. And, I thought what they were doing was really cool, but like what the storyline they were doing was. But I understand why CBS balked at it at the same time. And it was just one of those sad things because I saw the prelude they made and it was really cool. And I would have liked to see what else they were going to make, but they also overstepped some bounds there a little bit.
Yeah, I was really excited about it. At the time, I was listening to 2 or 3 Star Trek themed podcast dramas. And it was, I don't know, right around that time that they had to change all of their intros and outros to get rid of the word Star Trek and get rid of all references to Star Trek affiliated things like the Federation and Starfleet. And so it was a pretty big impact in the podcast world. But knowing that STO was officially licensed, you guys are totally like in the clear.
Yeah. Super in the clear.
Trivia alert.
What's happening? What's happening?
What's going on? What is all? Don't tell me. Is it that time?
Big J, we're being attacked by the Triviites. All right. So question number 1.
Okay.
All right.
And there's a theme here. In honor of the news, which we'll talk to you about later, regarding Viacom and Paramount possibly merging, this round of trivia is dedicated to 2-part episodes and episodes in which regular characters cross into other series.
Okay.
Question number 1. 3 original series actors guest star in The Next Generation. Name 2 of them.
Oh, well, that's easy. First is Leonard Nimoy. And oh my God, DeForest Kelley is in the very first episode. And I'm going to get reamed on the internet for this. I can't remember Mr. Scott's real name.
Jimmy Doohan, but you got
Jimmy
2 out of 3.
Thank you.
Oh, that should be forfeit. Boo.
Well done. Oh, there goes the
lost a
record.
quarter of my geek card.
Okay. In the Next Generation episode, Time's Arrow, Data encounters a hotel valet who will eventually write 2 wild novels set in the Klondike Gold Rush. Who is that hotel valet?
Oh, God.
Wow. Oh, that's a good one because
I remember this episode. It's a weird episode.
I can see his face, all his scenes, but
it also happens to be Dag's favorite episode of The Next Generation.
Man, this is a good one. I don't know.
The trivia are demanding an answer.
Okay, I am going to say no, I don't have an idea.
Can you give hints? Can we phone in a friend?
Yes, you can phone a friend. No, I don't actually know how we're going to do that on this podcast. but in the middle of all that static, Jack London was the correct answer. So well done.
Damn it! That's actually what I was going to guess.
Now you know. Now you know. Do the guess. Question number 3. Rated the worst Star Trek episode of all time by Screen Rant. Will Riker and Deanna Troi pay homage to the founding of the Federation in which Star Trek series?
That was Enterprise.
Yeah, it's Enterprise, right?
It was Enterprise.
Yeah. That was the debacle. That was the.
We've decided to end this episode by these are the They decided to end this series by making it an episode of a series that ended 10 years ago.
Yep.
Why?
Fun fact, that same Screen Rant rating said Code of Honor was the second worst episode. All right, question number 4. The trivia.
Code of Honor the one where Wesley gets almost killed for falling on a plant?
No, Code of Honor is the one where they encounter
it was the Black Panther episode.
What was their name?
Oh, geez. Oh, my God. The super racist episode, right. Okay.
Yes.
I don't even remember the name of their race. They started with the L. Oh, that's a failure on me. Okay, question 4. In DS9, during the joint Cardassian-Romulan attempted genocide of the Founders, Garrick is tasked with interrogating which shapeshifter?
I'm going to guess... Okay, so they're all just called the Founder, except for Odo. So if you're looking for a specific name, it was probably Odo, but that doesn't make a lot of sense.
But it's exactly right.
Yes! Aha!
Garrick is given a device that prevents Founders from shapeshifting and uses it on Odo to extract information out of him. Odo reveals the secret that he wants to go home and rejoin the Great Link.
Yep.
This is a close one because I think Mike is up 2. I've got 1, and then we have a no answer, I believe.
It's okay. The Triviites are enjoying our suffering.
I did not know until this moment that this was a contest. I better get this last one.
All right. In Star Trek Voyager, Will Riker shows up again to witness in the defense of which godlike alien entity? We're looking for a name.
Q?
Close.
It was
Oh, it's...
I think it wasn't it?
It's
was
Q's
it Quinn?
like kid.
I didn't hear you, Big J.
Was it Quinn?
It was Quinn.
Oh. All right. Do you have a tiebreaker question?
Yeah, you got to have a tiebreaker now. This is a good one.
Okay. Name as many titles of Luoxana Troy that you can.
Well, you win.
Heir to the Holy Rings of Beta Z. Edit all this out. I don't remember the rest. Sacred Chalice of Rick something. No, actually, okay.
Daughter of the 5th House, holder of the Sacred Chalice of Ricks, heir to the Holy Rings of Beta Z, and certainly not Googled.
That will win.
I think you got it. I was about to say, I'll edit all this out, but now it's going to stay.
That will
was
win
Googled.
the
That was
tiebreaker.
Googled. I cheated like so hard.
Oh.
I Captain Kirk'd this Kobayashi Maru.
Well, for this, the Triviites are pleased with our answers, and we'll move along.
Good game.
Goodbye, Triviites. Wherever your journey takes you, I hope it brings you
time.
around to this podcast again at exactly 47 minutes.
They won't be back until the next time we host a guest on Beyond Trek.
I did like, by the way, that you reached out to me and gave me the opportunity to not embarrass myself by not knowing Star Trek trivia, and I threw myself on my bot left like a true Klingon warrior.
You did well. You will be remembered with honor. No, that's something that we do. Is I want to reach out ahead of time so that the red alert isn't entirely out of left field.
What's happening?
I like that. I kind of like that part of it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I wanted to talk about the Paramount Viacom merger, but a little birdie told me that you guys talked a little bit about it while I was experiencing a transporter malfunction.
Oh, I didn't realize you were offline. Yes, we did talk about it.
Little transport malfunction, but no, go ahead. We only kind of skimmed the surface a little bit on that, so we can circle back around to that.
I would be totally satisfied with a yes or no answer, but if you wanted to go into detail, if you had any detail, any discussions about what effect the Paramount Viacom merger may have on continuity in STL?
Continuity, I don't think it'll have any effect at all. Like I said before, we're a licensed CBS product. I don't think it'll change our relationship with CBS at all, unless somehow Viacom merging in completely changes how CBS interacts with its licensees, which I really don't think it will, because it's obviously working and working well. So I continuity, I don't think it'll affect us. There may be some business things that change over the course of the next year or two, but I don't think we'll be privy to most of them. And there certainly haven't been any meetings about like, oh my God, this is going to change everything. At least none that I've been privy to.
Right on. So forgive me for not being the all master of trivia regarding STO, but does CBS own the rights to the movies as well?
It was really complicated until this. I think they do now, but I think when they initially split, the movie rights went to Viacom/Paramount.
You're correct.
Which is one reason why it took us so long to get Star Trek Beyond content into the game. Not that we're putting Star Trek Beyond content in the game. I certainly didn't just confirm something we confirmed at STLV.
Nice.
But yeah, we were going to do that anyway, and then it's just making it easier.
Well, I have a lot of friends who can't wait to hear of the exploits of Captain Jayla and how she refers to everybody by their first and middle initial, like her friend James T.
I would love to do a storyline with her. That actress, I think, is maybe too big for us because she went on to star in a bunch of other stuff as well. She was the Mummy, but
Right,
I would love to do that story. I loved Jayla as a character, and the fact that she, sort of joined Starfleet at the end. I was like, yes, give me more of that.
Now, here's an interesting question I have for you based off of what you just said. So, Cryptic, for the start of Star Trek Online, got Leonard Nimoy.
Yes.
And I would have to say that some of the talent that you guys have gotten have not been real small fries. But when you got Leonard Nimoy and compare it to, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the actress who played Jayla.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But so what's the thought process behind this person is, going to be hard to get. This person's probably too big for us. I would think that Leonard Nimoy set that gold standard and that she would be not as difficult to get as, say, Jerry Ryan or LeVar Burton. And that actress, her name's Sophia Boutella. So I guess what makes you say that we can get Leonard Nimoy, but we can't get her?
I was mostly kidding, but I think I was referring to the fact that she is a lot of people who are, let's say, currently working in big Hollywood movies command a higher price than, say, even a legend like Leonard Nimoy. But in terms of how we pick actors, I think we always start with what makes the most sense for the story. So, like we know what story we're going to tell for our 10th anniversary, for example. We figured that out. And so now we're in the process of reaching out to the cast that we think makes the most sense. Once we've made contact with them, then it's a question of negotiating all the things and figuring out who and what we can afford and all of that jazz. We try to pay a similar rate to all the different Star Trek actors that we bring in because, we don't really want to mess with the relationship we have with them by saying, so-and-so is more important than so-and-so. And I think there's a lot of that in acting that is just better to just avoid. But we start with the story and then we reach out and see what we can negotiate.
Have you had any stories that had to be pretty much completely redone or just got jettisoned because you just could not get the actor to agree to it or to make contact about it?
Definitely. And we had the opposite of that today, or not today, but this year. We had moved forward with the assumption that we wouldn't get Jason Isaacs because we all kind of was like, well, he was in Harry Potter. We're not going to get him.
Right.
And so we wrote the story we wrote for Rekha Sharma and for her character with the idea that Lorca would be, off to the side somewhere, just off screen, or like lying in a medical bay. And then when we found out that Jason Isaacs was willing to come on and work with us, which was amazing, we actually had the positive experience of, okay, let's rework this storyline to include him, which was great.
Wait, you're telling me that you couldn't get some dude from Harry Potter, but you can get one of the greatest actresses from the second best science fiction franchise of all time? /S.
She got when we put out a question, cute. Like we put out for fan questions for her when she was coming in to record, so I could do an interview with her. And she, one of the most common questions we got was asking her why she's based that guy in Battlestar Galactica.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys got someone from Battlestar Galactica. That's a good show. I think that was very commendable there.
Yeah,
I love Battlestar, and I love it because his name's escaping me, but one of the main writers from DS9 went on to be one of the main writers for that show.
Ronald D. Moore.
Thank you.
He was on Outlander.
That was the 5th trivia question. The trivia answer, please.
Well, so Ronald D. Moore was on Voyager ever so briefly, and he left, and I don't know the details if it was a mutual leaving, but essentially the Battlestar Galactica was what he envisioned and pictured that Star Trek Voyager should be. Because
that
yes,
before as well.
Yes, you're putting the ship by itself out in the Delta Quadrant. This is what it should look like. This is what it should be. However, Rick Berman and Brandon Braga had just spent 7 seasons fighting with Ira Stephen Bear on DS9 and it being serialized. And they wanted to go back to episodic format like they did with TNG very badly. So basically it was just a complete brick wall of absolutely not. Voyager is not going to be the serialized thing. You got it with Deep Space Nine. Be happy with that. We're going to think about syndication, thinking about, all the big producer, money talks things. We want our bottle shows back. So it was that creative difference. What Battlestar Galactica was what he pictured.
To be fair, for television at the time, that made more sense. For now in the wonderful days of streaming, we can binge all of Deep Space Nine and say, oh, that's wonderful to be able to watch it this way. In the 90s, that was hard if you missed an episode of DS9 and we're like, wait a minute, what happened? Who's dead?
Right. You're right. Yeah, you're pretty much done.
Yeah. So it's I think Moore was ahead in his thinking, but I don't think the people behind Voyager were necessarily wrong. And I think, a lot of the things that people have issues with in Voyager mostly come from comparing it to Deep Space Nine because they were on the air at the same time. I think DS9 is a wonderful, wonderful show and probably has a just slightly stronger set of characters than Voyager did. And I think that's probably what sinks them more than anything else.
Well, you're absolutely right. And Mike, we appreciate you coming on here again with us. And we're definitely going to need to do this again because...
Absolutely. I'd love to come back.
Yes. Star Trek Online continues to just keep chugging away. It keeps plugging away. And now that we have this new content coming in, the merger of Viacom and CBS, all kinds of things Star Trek Online is not a indie project. It's not a fan film. It's not a pet project. It's really getting itself intertwined in and is affected by all of these things. So we're definitely going to hear from Mike as often as he wants to come on to talk to us about what's happening and what's going on. We'll get a little more into your roadmap. Next time I saw there was a roadmap you put up on.
We did, yeah, for STLV. We put up the next couple of months.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll definitely be getting into that. Mike, thank you. We can't thank you enough for coming on with us tonight.
With guests like you, how can we fail?
Oh, with guests like me, how can you succeed?
Future J, insert sound clip of Klingon bird of prey exploding.
There's plenty of those.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's thank you very much. We actually both have early morning work commitments. You know how that goes.
Yeah, and I got to go join my D&D game. I'm about an hour late.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no, I wanted to chat with you guys. It's fun.
Good. Well, enjoy that, and good luck on the play that you've got coming up that you're directing. I think that'll be awesome.
Thanks.
I'd like to even get into some of that next time we get a chance to talk.
Sounds good, man. All right.
Good. All right. Well, you guys, good night. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
And prosper.
Kapla!
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.